People are here, right? I know we're running short of time, so maybe what I'll do is instead of asking everyone to introduce themselves, we'll just jump straight in. And I'm sure your replies and your answers will bring out the flavor of who you are. Maybe building on what Anka has mentioned, let's go into healthcare, right? And Suto, maybe if I can ask, Anka has showed us what is the state of art in what he's doing, right? Maybe can we get your view on the state of the art in smart health and smart cities from your perspective in the Ministry of Health?
Thanks for your question. So I think Uncle has shared quite a fair bit of his work and his point of view, which is, as King Wang has mentioned, very fascinating. From our perspective over here, I think there are a few things to look at. There are some foundations that we have, tying back to the theme of smart city, really. The prosperity of the city actually depends very much on the health of the citizens in the city, and therefore healthcare is important. If you tie back to some of the existing things that is already done, for example, we do have pretty good enablers that allow us to be able to work on smart health. For example, we have the National Electronic Health Record. It doesn't cover all the healthcare institutions in Singapore, but it covers all the public healthcare institutions, for which, if you look at acute care, is 80% of the market share. For primary care, it is a lot less, just 25%. But there are some private healthcare institutions that are voluntarily contributing data. So we have a pretty good backbone when it comes to the data. We have some apps. I think in the Uncle's example earlier, you see a National Steps Challenge from HPB. There is a Healthy 365 app that helps you track your physical activity. You get rewards for it. Now there are also nudging coming in. There's also Health Hub, which provides summarized information or health information about yourself. You can also get information about your loved ones. You can help to make appointment on their behalf and for yourself as well. So there is quite a fair bit of, I would say, foundational work that has been done. But I think moving forward, Uncle has also mentioned about Healthier SG. It's absolutely important. Our system is still very acute-centric, very hospital-centric. What we are trying to do is to move care to the community, allowing individuals to have a relationship with their general practitioners, family physician, creation of health plan that goes beyond the curative aspect. I don't go just for cough and cold, but to look at how I can improve my health. That includes all the physical activity, diet, and all the other things that you should be doing. Right? And at the heart of it really is about behavioral change, which is what Uncle has mentioned. And I think digital technology play a huge part. And with all the data that we have collected, I think there's a lot more that we can do. We have been looking at how we can have better planning. So you look at different personas or different stakeholders. At the administrator level, we are using a lot of the data, the geospatial, for example, to look at how we can do better planning, utilization patterns of healthcare services for all the different residents in different areas. How do we then use that to organize ourselves? How do we use that for enrollment of GP, for example? Down to the clinicians. How do we provide more information to the clinician? Creating network of GPs in the form of primary care network where they support each other. There's GP leaders who will come forth, and then we have shared services that are provided to the GP, because some GPs may not have all the ancillary services that you see in our, say, polyclinic in Singapore, which is a subsidized primary care facility. So putting all this network, giving them the data, getting them to come together, helping the clinicians to actually deliver better care to the residents. And finally, a lot of the work, I don't want to repeat what Uncle has shared on how do we nudge the individuals to actually do more and to lead a healthier lifestyle.
Thank you. Maybe Jian, I think you're looking into retail largely, or maybe more. We were just chatting. Maybe what is the state of your art and where are the overlaps between what Suto has said and Anka has mentioned?
From my side, actually I feel that Anchor, he introduced the lecturing mechanism. I think this is very special for the healthcare. I would like to challenge that it's possible to extend this lecturing for the other vertical domain. Maybe better, for example, we can for the concept. I mean, inside this smart city, there are so many aspects, like the traffic jam. If the driver, their behavior to following some small lecturing, and they follow the same rule, maybe the speed will become faster and faster, but in a very slow manner, even though the traffic jam happened. But we still move on, keep moving on, right? So this is one I'm thinking. And for example, I would like to take another example for the because we get involved in this COVID situation, so the personal exercise and I mean the fitness. There are another very interesting problem is that we keep working remotely at home for a long time comparing to before, back to 3 years ago, right? So, for example, myself, I getting a bit fatter, but I cannot make myself change myself, even though a little behavior change to do some exercise. So I'm not sure it's possible to apply such kind of lecturing mechanism to help people for this kind of a fitness and for the self-training. I mean that exercise training. So there are so many extension. I feel that this is very interesting. Yeah. And we can extend this lecturing mechanism to any aspects for this smart city implementation, I think. Yeah.
So maybe building on your experiences in NEC, can I maybe check in with you in the smart city space or in the smart technology space? What has worked? What have you found that has worked, and what have you found that hasn't worked? And the idea here is to build on some of the ideas that they share. In Singapore, for example, the National Steps Challenge has worked very well. And in Anka's presentation, you see where he points out where nudges are working and when you need to be careful. And the longer term, how to make sure that we don't lead to a dystopian world. So maybe from your experience, right? Because you're in the private sector, day in, day out, you're working with people who want immediate results. They want it to impact the bottom line. What has worked and what has not worked?
Actually, this is a very difficult question to answer. From my personal opinion, I feel that in the past 5 years, even though we are doing some related work for pushing the implementation of smart city in Japan, like I am mainly focusing on the video analysis. We often suppose that, for example, use the video, a large amount of video data to help solve some real problem for the retail domain, and try to analyze the people's behavior change, right? How they buy, how they want to buy, but how they want to buy. This is very difficult, but I feel that we are trying, but the behavior and the situation is not changing so much. Yeah, even though we apply some like the RFID to track the person's behavior inside a store, and also we also try to use some camera to trace the person inside a big scale shopping mall like that. But the difficult thing is that currently the technology cannot be very good for detecting those intents. People didn't buy. They come but didn't buy. So it's one kind of, it's not working, it seems. Yeah, we are trying to do that and pay effort to do some analysis, but it still not work. Yeah, this is one example.
Yeah, so the deeper issue here, which is why it's such a difficult question, is that when it comes to data analytics, AI, very often you know what they do, but you don't know why. Right? It's like the retailer says, I know why they bought a luxury bag, but I do not know why they bought it. Right? Maybe on that specific point, that the intention is what we're getting at, but it's hard to get that from the data. What are some of your experiences in uncovering intention and leading to better policy outcomes, as well as better algorithmic interventions? Anka?
Yeah, that's a great question. And So there's a lot of good work that is happening in the deep learning, machine learning space today, where there's a whole field called intent discovery, and it ties with this field called explainable machine learning, particularly explainable deep learning and explainable graphs. So some of the recent work has shown that you can actually look at pathways that led to a particular decision to happen. But all of this is still very bounded by the granularity of data and actions that we have on the, say, purchase behavior history. So, if you have a website and you're, selling certain products and someone buys that product, did they buy that product because they belong to a particular segment? Is still a question that advertising is asking. For the last 20 years, we've all gone to conferences where advertising technology still talks about how good is the quality of segments that they have for a panel, for people. So I don't think that we are anywhere close to solving the problem of intent yet, but we are close to solving the problem of making the offers more relevant for the outcome and the goal that we as a society want to accomplish. Whether we can do that by explaining our way through how we arrived at that decision and whether that is good enough or not for the outcome is something that we will have to study, both from a legal perspective as well as from a social perspective. But lot of things to be answered there.
Okay, maybe
Experience from a public policy perspective.
Yeah, maybe you can add on to that. Less so about technology, but I think the data has a lot of limitation. It tells you a lot about the what people are doing, what they have done, potentially predicting what they will do in the future, but that doesn't tell you the why, which is why it's important to combine what we do analytically using, say, your admin databases with, say, primary research. Whether you go into a focus group discussion or you actually do a survey, I think it helps to uncover the intention, the motivation behind many of the actions that you see in your database. I think it's important for us to bring in that qualitative aspect so that then we can look at why people are behaving in a certain way. Take, for example, simple things like waiting time in the hospital. In the past, many years, the trend has been like this. When you ask someone how long they've been waiting in a hospital, in an emergency department, for example, they will tend to overestimate the time. But interestingly, in recent years, I don't know whether it's because of COVID, we see a reversal of that trend. So I think it's important to keep in mind what is people's perception, what's the motivation behind many of the things, so that then we don't lose that part and just focus on the quantitative aspect.
Thank you so much. And I think trying to understand, well, in the Lee Kuan Yew Center, we sometimes say that, you got big data, but you got to worry about the thick data as well, right? That's how people behave, their intentions. And I suppose that's one way to guard against whether we are going down a dystopian path, because when you understand why people behave and what they are being influenced by, you can put some brakes in if need be, or accelerate it if it's a good one. Maybe at that juncture, because it links to an earlier question from the audience, I want to just open the floor to the audience and see if anyone has any questions for any of the panelists at this juncture. Anyone? Oh, here you go. Yeah, happy to have you ask the second question.
I guess this is for everybody. I know there are certain behaviors that could be encouraged maybe by nudging, and some of them are things that really fall into the bucket of being habits that are like basal ganglia mediated and can have this aspect of sort of online addiction to them, and maybe you really feel like you're getting that little shot of Pez every time that you go and watch the short video or the short form format or something. So I guess I wanted to sort of ask, when it comes to that type of behavior where maybe the person knows that this isn't really good for them, but it's very hard to break out of it. How hopeful are you that there are interventions and techniques that we can take that would kind of help all of us to get to a better place from that standpoint?
So really how to change a behavior that sounds bad and could be addictive. Yeah, right? Okay, yeah. Who wants to take a shot? Another difficult question, but that's why we have these panels.
So, great question again. I think, addressing addiction through, say, algorithmic nudging is one of the top use cases that we see all the time. Okay, whether it is smoking addiction, for example, right? So, the fact that repeatedly telling smokers not to smoke through multiple channels has not worked. But there is a theory, and I will say that this is a theory still. It has been observed in some literature that encouraging smokers to take up running instead of targeting them with advertisements about quitting to smoke actually leads to a higher prevalence of reducing number of cigarettes that they smoke per day, and then eventually leading to quitting, because it is so interfering so much with their need to perform better as they pick up running as an exercise, that secondary or primary benefit of running now becomes a more desirable outcome. So in this case, yes, you can argue that you are replacing one addiction with the other. Running becomes an addiction, but that's how we roll as a society, and nudging helps do that algorithmically better.
Yeah, maybe I'll add on to what Uncle has mentioned about smoking. So I recall many years ago, I saw this study. It was actually done by a health agency outside of Singapore, where they are looking at smoking cessation, right? So they found that actually, if you look at the Google search trend, that was many years back. I don't know whether it's still the same now. People tend to search about quit smoking towards the end of the year, where people are trying to make a New Year resolution for the new year, right? And that's when then they realize that there's an opportunity for them to weight more of their advertisement around smoking cessation during that period, maybe the last quarter of the year. So from a timing perspective, I think it matters. Second thing is that, again, I'm no expert in this. I heard it takes 21 days to change a habit or form a habit. From a new habit. So a lot of the, I think, smoking cessation program also then has a minimum duration that allows people to form a new habit to replace their old habit, or say, for example, smoking. Yeah.
Okay. From my side, actually, this is a very interesting story talking about the smoking, stop or continue, right? I want to add some other example. We can connect the healthcare to the other business domain, like the insurance. For example, someone, they won't buy any insurance, but when they get in the ill situation and have an operation, for example, take myself, back to 10 years ago, I did one operation, okay? And then before that, I haven't thought about buying an insurance. But after that, I changed my behavior, changed my mind. So I feel that as an addition to the nurturing mechanism, I feel we need to have something like we need to consider the balance between the trade-off between the reward to the human, and also the risk to the human. Because this is a trade-off. If you feel the higher risk, then you will feel that this thing is value for you. You will get more reward if you change your behavior. So I'm not sure in the future is there any technology can evaluate this effect to tell the people, oh, if you try this. If you take this option, then your the risk will reduce, and you get higher reward. Maybe they will impact the people to change their behavior. It is my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll quickly add one quick thing. So we saw a huge change in behavior in terms of addiction to social media, for example, in some of the studies, where as soon as platforms like Android and iOS introduced the screen time limit restriction feature, usage of, for example, Instagram and Facebook and some of these apps that were highly, how should I say, interesting for people, went down because people were able to set their own limits on that. And the bigger challenge was not the fact that people were learning about. The bigger challenge was nudging people to really know that there is this feature available that they can use to limit the time that they spend on these things. So again, one nudge versus the other nudge helps.
Thank you. Any questions from the floor? Great.
All right, thank you. That's a very interesting discussion. I'm really learning a lot. One question is about the sort of the risk of these nudging policies. How do I know that they're always 100% good? Because sometimes in health, one effect is being better for people's health. The other effect is lowering the cost. Most of the times you get both, right? But sometimes if you overdo it, it goes more on the cost side. Right? You reduce the cost of public health. Let me give an example. One was the over prescription thing, where if you nudge too much in that direction, doctors may decide to reduce even in the case where it's necessary. How do you control this? Right. Thank you.
Another tough question. Suto, you want to try? I mean, because it has tremendous implications on public health.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Good things that when you overdo it, gone too far, can become a bad thing in itself, right? So take, for example, maybe a slightly different example, where we're trying to manage the length of stay in the hospital, right? We may then be working in the hospital to see how can we first track the length of stay for patients, whether they are long stayers and why are they staying long. Actually, often what you see is social reasons why people stay very long, because maybe the family, the caregivers are trying to find a helper. The helper takes a long time to arrive, and therefore they have no help, but no choice but to then leave, say, their aged parents in the hospital, for example. Then they don't get discharged. And in the course of managing the length of stay, it's important for us to look at other metrics or indicators, like, for example, readmission rate. Because if the hospitals are overdoing it, they are discharging the patients prematurely, it will then result in a higher rate of readmission. So I think it's important to have some of these indicators in place for us to see whether there are some of these adverse effects of some of the things that we are trying to do.
Yeah, I think in response to the question of taking nudging too far, I would like to call out that there is a distinction between what we consider as nudging and what we consider as an intervention, right? So it's important to realize whether a nudge is a nudge or a nudge is an interventional nudge, right? And whenever we are in the domain of interventional nudge, at least in my work, we ensure and make sure that all interventional nudges are reviewed by a board of experts that are certified as subject matter experts in that intervention. So, for example, we would algorithmically we would not send out a nudge around, say, dosage change to a patient unless it was validated by a clinician before the nudge actually went out to the patient in some in any case, right? So there are guardrails and pathways that you build through when you are using the nudging solution or an engine to intervene in that situation. So.
Ken? Other questions from the floor? Oh, great. Yeah. I've been told we can run over a little bit, so I hope everyone doesn't mind. Maybe another couple more questions. Yeah.
Thank you for the very interesting discussion. And my question is, how can we make the nudging more data-driven research? Like, because for nudging, I think most of it we cannot learn from the existing data. It is kind of out of the distribution or kind of drift from the existing data. And how can we make an AI research or more data-driven ways to solve this?
Looking a little bit into the crystal ball, I think. Who wants to do that?
Let me try.
Let me try.
Actually, because nudging mechanism that they are learning is very, very new for me and also very interesting. Yeah, it's good. How we can combine this nudging mechanism with the big data, and use try to. I'm not sure it's possible or not because I'm not familiar with this analysis of the nudging mechanism. Okay, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Okay. Maybe we can still try to look at the large amount of data and make some basic assumption to see how is the effect of the nudging happening inside the historical data. Then maybe we can try to get some insight based on this kind of analysis and build a model, take this as the experience and the past knowledge and adopt it to the future prediction. That may be one way, I think. I'm not sure how to feel about Ankur.
Sure. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, exactly like how all big data platforms, across technology solutions. So just think about it like what Netflix would do when they are recommending a particular movie for you, right? Algorithmic nudging is just a little different in terms of its speed, in terms of its delivery platform, in terms of the content, right? But the core principle of learning from user behavior still holds even in this space, particularly for smart cities and policy and nudging. So that's one. Second is, there is no, data can actually tell you when not to nudge, right? So one of the utilities of doing this at the big data level is because a lot of unnecessary nudging happens where, today, for example, if you have a phone, you get almost 67 to 90 different notifications during the day. And these are all examples of nudges, right? Like the difference between notification and nudges, but mostly they are nudges with some call to action for you to do something. And it's becoming an increasingly fragmented ecosystem where, a lot of people are attempting nudging when nudging is actually not needed at that individual level of granularity. So, for example, someone viewed me on LinkedIn. Like, do I really need to know that right now? This person has looked at my profile. So, when you turn notification on, it can get annoying. And like LinkedIn, it's a great tool. Nothing wrong about it. But the idea is that, as an example, you see how there is a distinction between what amount of big data do you want to use in order to then take that action. And so Apple and even Android recently started grouping the notifications together to make that more comprehensible, and then you have to take certain actions. So again, it's a combination of user experience with nudge theory with AI that really comes together to bring about this nice way of using big data. So big data is not just about using it for developing the right recommendation or right nudge. It also helps in a lot of user design and experience. So that's another thing that you should do.
Yeah. Anyone?
Rahul?
Yeah. Maybe I'll add on to that. The no-show for appointment in healthcare is quite a big problem. It messes things up because you have your roster of staffing who are then made in response to all the appointments made. But then once there's no show, then it creates quite a fair bit of issues for the operations at the healthcare facilities. So what some of the people are doing is to predict likelihood of no show, right? So there's a prediction model being built. I don't think this has been done, but I wonder if you want to look at nudging, can we then look at those people who are predicted more likely to have a no show? Do we then maybe apply nudging on them and see whether some of these things work, and then have a close look back to see how we can improve it? So I'm just thinking whether then some of the prediction models that we build may not be meant for nudging, whether we can combine that with nudging and then capture the outcome of that and see whether that works. Yeah.
Did you share anything? No?
Add one more comment. This is a very good example, and also I would like to say, I'm not sure if it's possible now. The recommendation system is getting better and better, and also like Facebook. I don't know. I mean, on Facebook or on LinkedIn, we can add one good or bad, right? So this one kind of when we look at the back, then one kind of the nudging effect, nudging reaction, right? So if we can carefully utilize this data and to do some additional analysis in addition to the current recommendation system, maybe this will be very good feedback from the user side, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Are there questions from the floor? No? Maybe I do have one, just to build on, the questions that was just asked about what do we do and so on. The nudging part suggests that the actor, whether it's the clinician or the patient, is waiting for a nudge and the person will respond. But if we know that we're going into a world where this is going to be more prevalent, then how do the patient or the clinician or the actor prepare themselves for this future? Right? And my analogy for this is quite simple. In the same way that young professionals, young students now know that financial literacy is important, and they know that they have to take care of their well-being because of social media overconsumption, and also there are things they can do to prepare ahead of time. If we know we're going to a world where we're going to be nudged, and there will always be breaches, but there will also be benefits, what do you think we need to do to prepare ourselves and different actors for this world where nudging will become prevalent?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer being education, right, is one. But just like, we all learned, so let's take an example of email, right? Email started, we used to sign up and give our email address anywhere on the web, and then, we started getting spam. And then we realized that, it hurts productivity when you get spam messages, so you became more guarded about not giving your email address anywhere, right? And then in fact, Google introduced a very nice feature recently where you can take your email address and you can append the name of the site to it to then track. If you get an email back from someone, then you know which site has sold your data to someone in order to then, go and, so there you go, you learned something. Yeah. so with these type of things, I think society always evolves and keeps pace to some extent with the pros and the cons of it. But again, there is no substitute to being careful about how you introduce an intervention in society at large, particularly the work that you do at the national level in influencing policy. There is a huge amount of build-up that needs to be done before any of these programs can be initiated.
maybe for me, it's more from a personal reflection and some of the personal learning over the years. A lot of us are very busy. We have a lot of demand at work, family. Like for example, at work, you get a parliamentary question, you have to turn around very quickly, you scramble and get the answers out, right? And then at the same time, your WhatsApp group may be buzzing, asking you for certain questions, or you may need to respond to certain things. Then your HR tells you that you need to justify why you have this many headcounts, blah, blah, blah. All these things come in, right? We get bombarded with a lot of things, whether nudges or otherwise, right? What I find to be helpful personally is having some time when I practice mindfulness actually help, so that you're more centered on yourself, more aware of the stimulus that comes from different places, whether the stimulus is internal or external. You will get to be more aware of all these things happening, and hopefully being able to respond a lot better to the wave of nudges that comes in the future. Yeah.
Okay. From my side, maybe my thinking has a bit jump comparing to yours. I'm thinking about two aspects. First is the human aspect. Maybe we need long term, more time to create a new social habit, I think, because for people, when something change, something new happening, but they still need some time to accept it from the mental side or anything social behavior. Like we need some time. So this is one aspect I'm thinking now. Even though there are so many new technologies, emerging technologies happening very fast, but some of them will disappear, right? So I'm not sure. Maybe we need more time to use the human to test their technology and also try to accept this new thing happening. This one thing. And another thing is that regarding the data from the system perspective, actually I prepared some slide, but anyway, forget it. I wanted to mention about the strategy plan in announced by the Japanese government. They have this very big, ambitious goal. They say this is the super city, from smart city to super city. In the past 5 years, for building up the smart cities, the government seems that they don't want to focus on all. They don't want to do all, but only pick up those very advanced issues and try to tackle them first. Then after that, now they're trying to build up a super city, try to get all they want to do involved. So this from the system perspective, maybe we need a better platform to connect all the data and make them can be connectable and analyzable to like that you mentioned about the multi-modality, right? So we still need a very strong platform to support this kind of analysis. So I'm thinking maybe a bit some comparing your opinions, yeah.
And maybe on that front, a quick ending question. Since we have someone from the private sector, from public sector, and from academia, and of course a startup in private sector, maybe something like a wish list. Like, what do you wish could happen or would happen if you wanted private, public, and academic sector to work better together? Right? Is there something that it's like a wish list? And we'll end off with that question.
Yeah, my wish list would be to, simply, remove the roadblocks for adoption of some of these technologies, particularly by making compute infrastructure more available to some of the public sector, scale motions, because these are extremely compute intensive workloads that you run. So That's one. Second is just advances in AI and machine learning and investing in education so that, at least academia and private sector can produce the level of talent that is needed to fuel this, Armageddon of, data and behavior change and AI that is coming, right? So those would be my two main things on the wish list. Better support for producing better quality of data scientists and engineers, as well as better tooling for use.
For me, really, my wish list would be starting with the problem statement. I think there hasn't been enough conversation at a societal level on what are the biggest issues we want to solve as a society. A lot of things are quite top-down. Government thinks that these are the things that needs to be solved. Yes, a lot of the policies being pushed out are not out of thin air, not created out of thin air. It's, sometimes there are consultations with the public, sometimes it's based on some of the data that we are seeing, but I think a lot more can be done for the whole society to come together and agree what are the biggest societal issues that we want to solve. I think that's where the power of the people coming together, whether it is private sector, public sector, academia coming together, let's make sure that we are solving the biggest problem in the society. And hoping then that, like what Uncle is saying, the technological aspect, data aspect are ready when people are coming together to solve some of these problems.
My opinion is similar. Actually, yeah, we need to get more effort to pay more effort at the public policy side. The government should take the leadership to get the private and the public. The company and also the academy to get crossing their fingers to create some like a partnership platform or some consortium to utilize their effort, right? So this is one thing. And the other thing is that recently we mentioned about the smart city, the city operating system, right? The city operating system, we need to, the fundamental should be a platform, the data platform, right? And then to provide the very rich API for the whole city, the human, also the company, anywhere they can access freely and easily. So this is from the technical aspect. Yeah, this is two, I think.
Thank you. So let me just wrap up very quickly, just 1 minute. I think what we heard today is the more AI we have, the more data we have, the more we can do nudging, the more questions come up, right? So the more answers we throw out, the more questions come back. And a lot of those questions have to do with the fact that the more we use technology, the more we need to understand what's going on with the human behavior and the human intentions. And the only way to ask those additional questions and find those human dimensions is really to work together. And I think there is really a need for us to reduce all the bureaucracy that has popped up within organizations across sectors. And maybe that's a big problem and a big challenge for tomorrow that we all need to tackle together. So with that, maybe join me in thanking our 3 panelists. I learned a lot today, and I'm sure you did too. And I hope you have a good rest of the day for the conference. Thank you very much, and thank you to the panelists.